Hello and welcome to the Traveling Knitter channel. My name is Steph and today's video is going to be my 2021 reading and book stats. I have notes and an iPad here to help me keep track of the notes that I'm going to be talking about, the stats that I'm going to be talking about. So if I am looking down, that's what I'm looking at. So let's get started. The grand total of books that I read in 2021 is 95. My Goodreads goal was 100. Technically it was 75, but once I hit 75, I decided to up it. I've been setting a Goodreads goal since maybe 2011. I'm pretty sure it's been at least 10 years of setting Goodreads goals. I love year-long reading goals, big fan. I like goals in general. They push me to accomplish things. So typically I sit at around 100 books. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more, but generally I read about 100 books. Last year, 2020, not 2021, 2020, I read the least amount of books that I've ever read in probably, fair to say, since I've been reading. It was just an awful year for reading for me. I think I hit 50 books, which may be great for some people, but for me, that was an awful number. It was like a depressing number to even think about. So I decided with 2021 maybe not to shoot for 100 books like I normally do, but to aim a little lower. But I'm happy to say I am back in the swing of things with reading. I love reading and I'm loving the things that I am reading. The book definition, for me, book is really anything. Manga is a book. A comic book is a book. Graphic novels are books. Audiobooks are books. Cookbooks, I personally don't read cookbooks, but you know what? If I read a cookbook, I would count it. So the 95 aren't all novels, but I'm going to go through the breakdown of those 95 with a couple different ways. First breakdown is owned versus library. There are some other categories in there. So there's borrowed, review copy, owned, so physical, as well as library. And I really, really, really want to make a better effort on reading my physical books this year and every year. But last year, as expected, I read 64 of those books were library books and 27 of them were physical copies that I owned myself. I need those numbers up. I love the library. Now, a lot of those counts are audiobooks. I never buy audiobooks because I just don't. I just don't buy audiobooks. You can get them so easily from the library and there's not like a physical copy to them. It's not like I'm displaying them. So if I wanted to listen to a book more than once, I could get it from the library very easily. Also, Kindle books. I have been purchasing Kindle books, but really when they're on steep discounts. Like recently I bought the entire Throne of Glass. Oh my god, it's like totally getting this wrong. The Throne of Glass, the entire Throne of Glass series for I think $7, all of them. So I couldn't pass it up. So bought all those. But typically I don't buy Kindle books either. I get them from the library. Again, it's very easy. If I want to read it again, I can just get it from the library again. You could arguably say the same thing for physical books, but for me, seeing them is a big part of that joy. moving into a kind of similar related stat is the medium that I read the books. So that's print, digital, and audio. Those are the three mediums that I kind of look at. So this is pretty expected for me. 52 of the books that I read were physical books. And I get physical books from the library as well as off of my shelf. And then 26 of them were Kindle books or ebooks, and 17 were audiobooks. That number is, I think it's a normal number. I'm not someone who listens to audiobooks while driving very often. I do sometimes, but typically I'm going to either listen to a podcast while driving or I'm going to listen to music very loud. I live in an apartment, so I don't have my music super loud, and in my car is where it gets the loudest. So yeah, these numbers seem normal to me, and I don't care to change those. I'm pretty happy between physical and digital and audio. That mix is fine. A fun stat for me, and kind of expected, but also a little bit maybe unexpected, is genre. I am a lover of fantasy. Fantasy novels are my favorite thing to read and have been my favorite thing to read for forever. Harry Potter came out when I was basically starting to read, and game over. Game over. Loved it. Loved the genre. So it's not surprising that 30 of the books that I read are what I would qualify or classify as fantasy. What is interesting is that 34 of the books that I read are romance. Now this number definitely gets beefed up because of the manga that I read. I like shoujo manga, and shoujo manga to me is romance. It's lighthearted, fluffy romance. So that's where a big jump of the romance comes from. I'm not reading like a ton of romance books. It's manga that are bringing that number up. And the last stat I want to talk about is star ratings. So star ratings are, I don't have a problem giving books 5 stars. I think I'm probably one of the most lenient of my friends, my physical friends, in giving out star ratings, and that if I absolutely love a book, it's getting 5 stars. To me, 5-star isn't perfection. 5-star isn't the perfect book. It's just a book that I loved, that I thought was fantastic. So that's my 5 stars. 3 stars are fine. I read quite a few 3 stars. I don't regret reading the 3 stars. I like reading the 3 stars. Those are a lot of times the audiobooks that I listen to. And then 4 are just fantastic books that just didn't quite make it to that 5. 1 are books that I just thought were garbage. 2 are books that I'm just like, I wanted to say fine, but that's the exact same word that I used for 3 stars. 2s I don't regret reading. It's just probably something I wouldn't recommend unless I know that this other person really likes that niche or whatever. So for stat wise, it's pretty like almost evenly split. It's 30% I gave 3 stars, 35% I gave 4 stars, and 23% I gave 5 stars. And I don't think I gave anything nothing was a 1 star this past year, which is great. And that does make sense because I made like a pretty concerted effort to read books that I knew I was going to love or like. Like I wasn't just randomly going on my Overdrive app and just looking at what was available for audiobook and then just randomly picking one. I didn't do that as often. That's something I do with audiobooks specifically, and that's where those 2 stars sometimes come in. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about are the top 10 books of 2021. Now, I'm not going to talk about these in any sort of order, and I'm going to be grouping some of them into series. So I'm not, like, the book that I pick up isn't necessarily my favorite of the series. It's just one that I want to showcase, or it's the one that I read, or what have you. The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, which is a Pulitzer Prize winner. This book is fantastic. It's also very short. So if you're gonna pick any of the books that I recommend as a book that you want to read in 2022, pick this one. Please pick this one. I loved it. It's a difficult book. You're not gonna like love it because it's happy. It's not a happy book. The story takes place in a fictional school called the Nickel School, and it's Nickel School for boys, but it's based on the Dozier School for boys that's in Florida. And we follow our main character, whose name is Elwood, and he's really smart. He's a smart kid. He has ambition to, get a better education. He loves Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he's got a record of his speeches that he listens to a ton. He's helping out his grandma. He lives with his grandmother because his mom and his dad up and left and went out to California to make a name for themselves or whatever it is that they're trying to do. And so he's helping his grandmother. He works at a store part-time, and he's still in high school. And a new high school teacher who is part of the civil rights movement, he works out this, or I don't know if he works it out or if he just tells Elwood about this program that the local college is doing, which is allowing high school students to take college classes to get college credit for free. And so Elwood decides that he's going to do this. And unfortunately, Elwood is just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it completely changes his life trajectory. And he is shipped off to this school, and it's heartbreaking. It's upsetting, but absolutely worth the read. And when I was finished, I just laid on the couch. I was doing research on all these schools. Like, I'd known about the Dozier School. Also, to the in Canada, there were several children found on school properties, and Indigenous people of Canada. And it just like, this isn't far distant history. Like, this is still a thing. Some of these schools were shut down literally 40 years ago. I mean, your parents are probably older than 40, maybe, based on the demographic of people that watch this. My parents are. So it's, I don't want to say too much, but just know that it's upsetting, but you will fly through this book. Last year, I finished a couple series, and one of those series is what is the series? I always mess up what the series is called. I can't remember, but the book is The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. I love, like, the other two that I have that are this, the UK edition, they aren't floppy paperbacks like this. So I don't know what happened and why we lucked out with a floppy paperback for this one, but this is the third in the series. It starts with The Bear and the Nightingale, so I can't really tell you much about this one, but the first one is set in Russia. You have Vasya, who lives in this village that has, what are these characters? Demons. And she sees these creatures, these demons that you worship. So there's like the one that lives in the stove, there's the one that lives in the bathhouse, there's one that lives in the stables, and you provide offerings for them, and they will help, keep your fire going, keep your horses calm, and all of that jazz. And Vasya's father remarries and brings the stepmother to their village, and he's like the chieftain, and she is just not about the old religion, and so it's like Christianity or something like that, or Catholicism, Catholics, and so she is like, we need to save this village because everyone is like worshiping demons. And so she brings this priest, and this priest is like, he is like Frollo to Vasia's Esmeralda. Like, I've said it before, the whole creepy, vibey thing, yes. This one, fantastic. I actually loved the later books more than the first one. I liked the first one, but I loved this one. I thought it was a fantastic ending, and you do more traveling. So in the first one, you're not doing a ton of traveling. You're pretty much just staying in her village and watching Vasia grow up. And in the last two, you're like out on adventures. 2 romance novels made it to my top 10 list. And the first one is A Rogue of One's Own by Evie Dunmore. This is the second book in the League of Extraordinary Women. And this one follows Lucy, and she is like the head of the women suffragettes in London. And she is trying to buy out this London printing press, so that she can basically get the word out to the women who read the paper that will come out of this printing press. But introduce Tristan, who is Lord Valentine, which is just such a fitting name. Valentine sounds like Valentine. It's a fitting name because he's the rogue. He's the rogue of the series, and he also needs to buy this printing press, and they essentially have to share it, and it's fantastic. This one is so good. This is my favorite of the series. The third one, I read the third one, and I was disappointed in it. Sadly, I was disappointed. It was still good. It's still fine, but this one, so fantastic. It's definitely one of those like enemies to lovers kind of deal, but also childhood friend enemies to lovers. It's fantastic. Another enemies to lovers is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This, fantastic. I can't wait to read this one again. Can't wait. This is about Alex, who is the first son, the son of the sitting president, who is a woman, and William, probably Henry, and Henry, who is one of the princes to the royal family of England, or British. Do we say England or do we say the UK? Not sure. Anyway, there's a little fiasco that happens at a wedding that shows up on the tabloids, and then to avoid an outright scandal, Henry and Alex have to pretend to be friends, and so they need to do a couple of jaunts across the pond where, you know, their photos are taken, where it looks like they're having a good time, that they're friends, all that stuff. And what do you know? They become more than friends, and then they have to hide their relationship because the son of the queen, the grandson of the queen can't be gay, is essentially what's happening. So it's so good. It's fantastic. Loved it. If you like romance, these two are great. Another series I finished in 2021 is A Darker Shade of Magic, and this is A Conjuring of Light, and it was just great. It was great. You're following all the characters that you know and love from the first 2 books. So again, can't really say much about this one, but I thought it was a great concluding novel to the series. I can't tell much about the 3rd book, but essentially you have multiple Londons, a Grey London, which is very much like ours, where there is no magic. Then you have Red London that has magic galore, and White London, which has been losing its magic, and then Black London, which is like gone, no one talks about it, it's just been swallowed up and closed. And there are people called Antari that can travel between the different worlds, and yeah, so that's kind of like your setting. And the second book it has like a magical contest, and then the third one is basically like good versus evil. It's fantastic. It's great. If you like fantasy, or even if you don't like fantasy, this is the fantasy series that I got my book club to read, and most of them don't read fantasy, and they loved the series to the point that they actually finished it before I did. I finished the An Ember in the Ashes quartet, and oh, I love it. It's great. I mean, I have a tattoo that is related to this. And just like with all the others, I can't really tell you what happens in this book, but essentially you have two main characters, Laia or Leah and Elias or Elias. I'm not really sure how each of those names are pronounced. Elias, he is in this like school where you're being trained to be a mask, which is a like elite fighting force for the country, the empire. And then Leah she is one of the races of people that are basically treated like dirt. So she lives with her grandparents, and a mask comes into her house and murders her grandparents and then takes her brother away. And so she's trying to get her brother back. And to get her brother back, she goes to this underground network of resistance fighters, and she's like, yo, I need help. Can you get my brother? And they say, we'll help you, but you need to break into this fortress and be a spy. And that's kind of the start of it. I'm skipping a lot of it because there are some pieces that kind of are better to read. I don't know, more impactful. This last one I think might be the chunkiest of them all. They're great. They're just good. They're good. I don't think I need to say that they're good because all these are 5 stars because they're the top books. The last physical book that I have on my shelf is a reread, and it is A Court of Thorns and Roses. It's the first of the series, and I plan to read all of them this year. And it's good. I love them. Funny enough, my Halloween costume was supposed to be Delilah Bard from this book, but I didn't finish it on time. So instead, I went as Feyre from this book. So this is super popular on BookTube for years. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling where Feyre is the youngest of 3 sisters, and she goes out hunting, brings back food, and they're essentially starving. They live at the outskirts of the village near the forest, and she goes into the woods to hunt, but game is scarce. It's winter. She thinks that they might starve, and so she goes further out after hearing that someone had seen a very large wolf. And she does spot it, and she kills it and skins it, sells the skin, all that jazz. But lo and behold, it wasn't a real wolf, it was a fairy. And so she is taken to the Spring Court, the land of the Fae, and she's got to break the curse. There's a lot more to it, and holy crap. If you like this book, but you didn't love it, read the second one. Give the second one a shot, because this series, more than any other series that I've ever read, the second one is so good. The second one is fantastic. And it's like such a change. I don't know how to explain how, it's not that it's different, but it's just, if there are things about this book that you didn't like, I think it gets addressed in the second one, and you realize that you almost feel vindicated. The rest of the books that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to pop up a picture because I don't physically have them. So we have Fangs by Sarah Anderson. This is a graphic novel comics. Like, it's not like a fully complete story. It's more just like snippets or scenes from daily life of a vampire and a werewolf relationship. It's so good. I really liked it. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. And yeah, I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. It's so quick to read and I loved it. And it was like kind of relatable, but also, you know, I'm not a vampire, but there were snippets of it where like, yep, I get that. I really get that. I also really loved The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It was amazing. I've listened to the Daisy Jones and the Six, which I'm torn with that because I love the audio and I really liked listening to it, but the story itself just made me mad. So really the rating that I'm giving it is because of how believable it felt, and just like I just didn't like any of the characters, their decisions. It just made me mad. So The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I actually really liked the characters. So this one just immediately popped up to best Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I've read. It was fantastic. So it's another like interview style book, and our interviewer is interviewing Evelyn Hugo, who is this like now reclusive former movie star who is like, yeah, you can write my tell-all biography, blah, blah, blah. And the whole time you're kind of like, well, why is she letting her do this? Why is she giving her all these secrets? And every kind of section is about her. She separates her life based on the husbands that she has. Why did she have all these husbands and all this stuff? It was so good. And I'm very excited to read Malibu Rising, which I believe follows the children of one of the husbands that she was married to. And then the last book that I will chat about are the Jackie Faber books. So this entire series I started reading, listening to on audiobook, and I've been loving the experience. Love it. The author is L.A. Mayer, who no longer writes because they are dead. That sounds, I probably could have said it a little bit more eloquently, but that's the case. And I am so looking forward to reading all of these books. I have read all of them except for the last one because I just didn't want the series to end. But I think I'm ready. I'm ready to read all of them. And the audiobooks have been just fantastic. The books are about a girl. Her name is Jackie Faber, and she was basically she was orphaned at a young age, but she's taken in by the Charlie Rooster gang in London, and she decides, I don't necessarily want to live on the streets. I want to go off on adventures. So she becomes a ship's boy on the HMS Dolphin, where she meets her friends, her mates, and adventures ensue. It's great. I love it. They're fantastic. I would love this to be a TV show. It would be so good. And those are the stats that I have for 2021, as well as the top books that I read in 2021. I'm planning out a video where I talk through how I track or document the books that I read. So there are a couple different methods that I have, and I'm trying out a new one this year that I have been enjoying, and I'll talk about some of the failed methods that I've tried. So if you're really into book stats or into tracking and things like that, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and also let me know your stats. How many books did you manage to read, and are you surprised with your reading habits? Are you making any changes to those reading habits in 2022? Let me know down below, because I love to know. I love stats. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you in the next video.